Socialists usually won't hesitate to point out that liberal democracies present the voter only with a choice between capitalist parties, i.e., their selection is curated to ensure that the capitalists never lose power. Now, authoritarian socialists also have the habit of using this as an excuse for why electoralism is a waste of time, and also why it's not a big deal, or indeed, it's actually good for a socialist country to be a one-party state. Now, there's a few reasons this could be the case, one of which is it's simply a gambit to persuade you to give them unchecked political power. They're really just interested in attaining control. They're not ideologically motivated. Sociopaths, megalomaniacs, petty tyrants, they're a universal feature of human power structures. They're always going to be there. In fact, it's so obvious that you're going to have to contend with them that you need to be inherently suspicious of anyone who claims that under their rule, you won't. They're either lying because they're one of them, or have drunk their own Kool-Aid. Now, it's impossible to determine what the ratio of lying powermongers to naive ideologues is, but it's worth addressing the latter group and anyone who might be listening to them. I understand a lot of you are paranoid about two things: reactionaries trying to regain power, and people who don't share your specific brand of socialism fucking up your project by having any say in it. To the latter, I must object that you cannot treat people as lab rats and insist on being able to do whatever you want to them and the society they live in because of how convinced you are that you've got the perfect secret formula and everyone else is wrong. We've been down that road before, and it doesn't end well. Great leap forward, etc. The public needs the ability not just to approve of what you're doing out of sheer respect for them as people, but also as a means of accountability if they do let you try and you fuck it up. Aside from that, this argument doesn't work anyway, because what exactly is holding your vanguard party to its mission in the absence of electoral oversight? I don't want to hear anything about interpersonal accountability between party members or bottom-up pressure. Existing party leadership can simply gatekeep membership to those that demonstrate obedience to them, thus preventing dissenting voices from having any say in how the party operates. In the absence of an alternative, people will default to either staying out of politics entirely or submitting to the existing party line. And again, who says that party line will be the execution of some grand socialist vision? Without the ability to vote anyone out of office, and with all membership gatekept to sycophants and drones, the only thing that could possibly keep them on task is their own initiative, their own ideological drive. If they don't possess that, or are simply more concerned with other things, like, say, enriching themselves, the public has no non-violent option to correct their behavior. And there is, plainly, no way to guarantee the general secretary of your vanguard party will be an ideologue. In fact, history shows us the exact opposite. A position of ultimate authority is far more likely to attract the self-serving than it is to attract those who submit themselves to a higher cause. Not that it doesn't happen, but it's far less likely, and also impossible to ensure, since telepathy isn't a thing. You have no idea if the charismatic leader of your movement is a true believer or a sociopath manipulating you. Only they know that. But at the very least, if an electoral check is in place, the public can, if they perceive them to be acting in a harmful, self-serving manner, give them the boot without needing to organize and resource a violent uprising. A task so vastly more difficult than voting that it very rarely happens, which is what allows despots to sit on their thrones and fuck people over with impunity. You're asking for a platonic philosopher king without calling it that. Perhaps it comes from a place of ego. They consider themselves committed ideologues, so if they or anyone else they approve of was put in charge with no way to remove them, they would not abuse their position to enrich themselves and boss the public around on personal whim. There's still two problems there. One, until you actually have total control, I have no way to know how truly committed to your supposed principles you are. If you're not, it's now too late, and those of us who put you in that position are suckers who are stuck following your diktats. Two, it is again an arrogant assertion that your particular vision of socialism is the one that must be realized with no impediments from anyone else, failing to either consider the possibility your vision is flawed or that the public may not desire it, revealing your project to be more about realizing a personal fantasy for your own satisfaction than emancipating the masses. There simply is no way to prevent widespread exploitation of a population by its rulers without competitive elections. The risks and difficulty of a successful violent revolt are so high that most people, most of the time, will choose to allow a leader to get away with abusing his power, often to extreme degrees, rather than risk trying to depose him. A socialist revolution that removes all the capitalists from power, but then replaces them with a one-party state, cannot fundamentally free the population, because the population is still subject to arbitrary rule by a leader they cannot hold to account except by force. The idea the leader will be a wise and committed ideologue who will not abuse his position, nor allow his underlings to do so, is utopian. You are rolling dice with an entire country, except it's a D20, and you only win if you roll 2 7s in a row. The risk is simply not worth it, unless you're so against any socialist project that isn't yours that any possibility you'll get your exact way is enough for you to take it, which is such an extreme and frankly selfish position to take. I cannot respect it. If anything, socialists should take the example of competitive democracies that are captured by capital and use it for their own ends. Imagine an electoral democracy where there are multiple parties to vote for, but they're all socialist. You have a Leninist party, a Maoist party, a syndicalist party, a libertarian party, etc., whatever people want, whatever gets traction. It allows various socialist ideas to be tested and swapped out as needed, and more importantly serves as a non-violent check against abuse of power to ensure the government actually remains socialist of whatever type, rather than just being an elite cabal wrapping themselves in socialist cloaks to excuse their excesses. The other reason, fear of reactionaries, is the more defensible reason to eschew electoral democracy, since it could be used to subvert socialism to reintroduce capitalism. But this assumes that you leave the paradox of tolerance wide open to exploitation, as many current democracies do. Most notably the United States. It has allowed fascists to take over the country due to being too committed to not excluding any ideologies from the process, even ones that don't believe in it. Just as I argue present liberal democracies need to gatekeep entry into politics to prevent fascists from using democracy against itself, a socialist democracy must do the same. It simply expands the gatekeeping to capitalist parties as well as fascists. I know I spoke against gatekeeping earlier, but this is all about context. If you gatekeep to the extent no other parties are allowed, your power is unchecked and despotism is basically inevitable, which defeats the point of having an emancipatory socialist society in the first place. But if you don't gatekeep at all, you will suffer the same problems vis-a-vis capitalists that liberals currently face vis-a-vis fascists in allowing hostile actors to use democracy against itself. You need to set ground rules to shut out actors that are fundamentally opposed, capitalists, fascists, theocrats, monarchists, etc., but never get too particular, lest you start paring down the range of acceptable socialist thought as well, which is a slippery slope we don't want to go down. One-party states are notorious for labeling even cliques within the party itself that oppose the opinions of the current General Secretary as being reactionary and capitalist and not really socialist, and therefore justifiable to purge. Any definition of socialism used to gatekeep political participation has to be broad, and it will include opinions you don't agree with. If you truly care about freedom from exploitation, there is no way around it. Just as real freedom cannot be realized without a state to guarantee rights for people. No, I'm not an anarchist, how could you tell? That is, some freedom must be sacrificed to have a guarantee of any at all. It also cannot be realized without a check on a leader's power, which is to say that, likewise, we must be willing to compromise on our particular visions of what socialism should be in order to ensure a government is socialist at all.